Well, we're going to talk the economy now. We are joined tonight by CFO of Fidelity, Gowan Bo. Gowan, thanks you so much for joining us. You're such a resource when in times like these. Now, you've had affiliation, obviously, with the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce, with the clearing banks, etc. What's some of the chatter you're hearing from business people as we go through this very uncertain period?
I think what's important is right now there's a lot of information, but some of it being misinformation, and I think the Minister of Health in the earlier segment just referred to that. So what you have is concern about the uncertainty. So what does this actually mean? Are we looking at a 4 to 6 week incubation period for the country? Are we looking at a longer time frame? Are we going to see this slowdown in terms of the external factors? Because if tourism is going to stay slow for an extended period of time, and I believe that what is most important now is separating what I'm going to call the virus containment from the economic fallout. And at this point in time, everyone is focused on the virus containment.
Now, we've gone through episodes like 9/11, the Gulf War, recessions, but something like this is so uncertain, especially because obviously this is something new, a new virus. It's shown its impact, and no one knows how long this is going to go on.
Well, I believe the difference with this one is this is truly a global event. 9/11 hit North America. The financial crisis was global, had a longer time frame in terms of when its impact started to be felt. This one is one where, in reality, the impact of COVID is being immediate because persons are now being encouraged to reduce their interaction. So it's now a behavioral change. So it is not about whether or not you feel comfortable traveling. There are travel bans. It's not about whether you feel comfortable going to a restaurant or feel comfortable going to a hotel. There are now restrictions on persons of 50 persons or more in terms of social gatherings. So the reality is what we used to do in terms of normal behavior is being severely impacted, and that is having an impact on how people respond. So there is a panic because persons are saying, I'm used to a hurricane, which is bunkered down for 2 days, and then the sun emerges. Now I'm doing the same shopping patterns. I'm stocking up, but in reality, this is not to be stocking up for the next week, 2 weeks. We have to be thinking about how are we going to manage being, I'm going to say, away from the normal activity for an extended period of time.
What advice, if any, may the business community offer to the government, which will inevitably feel the brunt of carrying the population with NIB contributions possibly, well, they will be have to be distributed on a larger scale. The corporations like water and sewage, BPL, advising customers that they'll pull back on disconnections. Obviously, there are implications there for their revenue sources.
I think we have to start by saying immediately the government is going to be called upon to ensure that persons have the ability to protect themselves against the virus. And so we've heard initiatives like the water and sewage, BPL, the Grand Bahama Utility Company, where the government is, to a certain extent, particularly in those cases where they are owners of the corporations, deferring payment. I wouldn't want people to start thinking that their payment is being waived, but certainly saying that disconnections because of non-payment is not going to be the order of the day, because we want you to clean yourselves. We want you to be able to clean surfaces and contain the virus. Ultimately, businesses are going to firstly look at the same situation. How do you help me get through this period where I may have uncertainty with my employees who may need to be quarantined simply because is an uncertainty. So they are exhibiting symptoms. We don't want them around other staff. We want to quarantine them. What does it mean for my actual cost base for the employees? And is there an opportunity to look at medical branch of NIB, which I think the notice that NIB has now submitted both for those contracting it and also being self-quarantined. So what are those initiatives so that eventually the first part is that I can make sure that my employees and my customers remain safe. Secondly, in the second phase is what initiatives can government implement to stimulate economic activity? Because sadly enough, a recession, and I'll use the term which people are afraid to hear, is simply 2 quarters of negative growth. if we don't have flights coming into the country, cruise ships coming into the country, the reality is we are going to have an economic slowdown. That is going to require creativity, ingenuity in terms of how do we stimulate economic activity. But economics is I'm going to say, not a science, but more one of those arts that needs to be how you feel is how you behave. Government has to exhibit confidence. It has to give the citizens confidence as well as the business community. And there are multiple levers they have to consider in terms of tax concessions, direct intervention, and subvention. But most importantly, there has to be very clear communication so persons don't feel that the sky is falling. What they feel is we're going to have a bumpy road, but we have persons who are knowledgeable enough advising those that need to be advised and implementing recommendations.
One word makes a difference, right?
Exactly.
And just very quickly, your affiliation with the Clearing Banks Association on that board, should people be worried about accessing money?
The reality is if you have money in the bank, the money is not going anywhere. We have for a long period of time now, but trying to encourage digitization. So you access your funds, whether you're using the online banking, mobile apps, whether you use your credit card or debit card. So the reality is the funds are there. There's not a panic to be rushing into, if you will, withdraw your monies because of any uncertainty as it relates to the cash balances. However, what I would say is persons need to bear in mind that this is not an immediate natural disaster that means there's an immediate need for spending right after it. This is going to be long-tailed. When I say that, at least for several months, because even if the virus is contained globally, the reality is who is going to start their normal behavior the following week. So we are going to experience some challenging times, and so persons need to be looking, one, at the rainy day fund that they may have, two, how do they manage the resources that they have, and most importantly, when they run into difficult times, not trying to run away from it, but being very upfront, communicative, and say, these are the cash flows that I have, how do you work with me in terms of ensuring that I meet my light bill, water bill, mortgage loan, consumer loan. And I think ultimately we know that in reality no one benefits from simply putting someone into what I'm going to say hardship and bankruptcy. It is better to work with persons with the cash flows that they do have to allow them to live what I'm going to say a dignified life but honor their commitments.
All right, thank you very much, Gowan Bowe, CFO of Fidelity. Always a great resource. Thanks again.